Welcome everyone, thanks so much for coming tonight. Last event of the year, we've been doing this for 3 years and I just would like to give Shepherd Mullen a round of applause for their support. We couldn't have gone this far except for their support, so thank you. Yasmin is actually moderating tonight, but she's also hosting the event, so she's covered the drinks tonight. So I'll let her say a few words.
Hi, I'm Yasmin, and I am an associate in Shepherd Mullen's San Francisco office. My practice focuses on intellectual property, and I am the co-lead of our firm's blockchain and digital assets industry group, which is about 60 attorneys in all different practice areas, everything from tax to securities regulation. And I am super excited to be here tonight and to hear from these super impressive, badass women.
Okay, so I'll let Yasmin introduce, or let the panelists introduce themselves. So I'll just pass this over. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Betsabe Botaitis. I'm a co-founder of a company called AIKON, AIKON. And we started the company 3 years ago. At AIKON, we are building identity and infrastructure to connect all public blockchains together. And our vision is infrastructure where there is an environment where private and public blockchains will connect with each other. At the core of our company is the belief that the same way that intranets were replaced by internets, we believe that public blockchains will become very relevant, but right now private blockchains is very important. My background is primarily in finance, over 18 years in finance, and that was a natural move for me to try to find ways to fix whatever is wrong in the finance system. But of course, there's a lot, so just touching a little bit.
Hi everyone, my name is Yoshikawa. I'm the Senior Director of Global Operations at Ripple. Ripple is a blockchain technology company based in San Francisco, and our mission is to enable the world to move money just like information does today. Thanks to the internet, now that we can send the information or data to anybody around the world instantaneously, but when it comes to money, there's still a lot of friction, particularly in the area of the cross-border payments. So that's what we are. Is it on? Just turn on.
You should grab that one right there.
How about 2 mics?
Yeah.
One of them will work, maybe?
So cross-border payments is our real focus, and today we are building a decentralized network of cross-border payments and working with more than 300 financial institutions today. So at Ripple, my responsibility is to really expand our business into overseas, and particularly focus on Asian markets, Japan, Korea, and also China to some extent as well. Thank you.
So I'm Brinley. I've been in the space, I'm a lawyer in the space, which is a little bit different than, well, not totally different, than our panelists. So I've been in the space for a bit over 3 years, and I'm now at a project. The project is called Celo. Celo is a full stack blockchain. The idea behind Celo is really thinking about the potential of digital assets and cryptocurrencies and blockchain. I think there are 2 major sticking points. One is, if you're ever going to use this technology to buy things and actually use it to save, you need to think about the volatility. You need to address the volatility in the crypto market and the cryptocurrencies themselves. Also, I think the second sticking point is usability, as I think now, even though this industry is 5 to 10 years old, depending on what project you're thinking about, the usability factor is still very low. That it's just very hard to access, actually use a blockchain if you are a normal person. So we're really trying to address that with the goal of a blockchain and a cryptocurrency, a stable coin, a stable value currency that can help markets where there may not be a deep financial infrastructure. So this gets to the 1.7 billion adults who are unbanked today. So really looking at markets outside the US. Before I joined this project over a year ago, I was at Ripple. I was there for about 2 years as general counsel. And before that, I was at PayPal and eBay. So really interested in global platforms and technology to solve problems.
Hi everyone, my name is Olga Mack. I am the CEO of Parley Pro. Parley Pro is a contract management software. I recently became a CEO about 3 months ago. Prior to that, I was VP of strategy at QuantStamp, and QuantStamp is on the intersection of smart contracts and security. And my job was to help to build protocols, partnerships, and products. I am still advising QuantStamp, and currently when I'm building contract management software, I am building it with an eye toward disruptive technologies. So I am looking for ways to make our contracts not just documents that minimize risks, but much more actionable and actually a little bit much more like assets. And so in my vision is to transform the job of lawyers from risk managers to asset managers. I am an attorney by training. I've been a general counsel before as well. I also used to work at Visa and Wilson Sun City. I've been on the cutting edge of technology my entire career in different technologies, and I'm really excited about blockchain and blockchain business models and applications. I recently submitted my book to a publisher about blockchain business models. I'm really fascinated with this field. I think it will be revolutionary to every field. Just like at some point electricity has revolutionized the way we live and do business, I expect things like blockchain to do the same.
Thank you.
Here we go. Introduce this back.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And a couple of you touched on this a little bit, but my next question for you was when and why did you decide to enter the blockchain industry? So we'll start with you today.
Okay, so I was working at Citigroup in the Community Development and Financial Inclusion Department. I oversaw about 145 countries on those programs. It really came to me that we were building programs to include the underserved and the underbanked, but we were hardly even touching the surface. It was nothing that I could say, one program after millions and millions and millions of dollars that I can say make a difference. So at that point, I realized technology is the only way that's going to make a difference. So I started searching for options, got introduced to blockchain via Singularity University in one of these potential finance department. And I started pitching to Citigroup at the time they were interested, and they said no. So I didn't have any other choice than to leave my very comfortable role to become eventually an entrepreneur in the technology that I wanted to implement. And it was a strategic movement for me to go from large institutions to smaller, like Lending Club and microfinance companies, to then understand the entrepreneurship landscape and how can I build my own company in blockchain. So that's how I moved into blockchain.
Thank you.
So my first encounter with Bitcoin actually goes back to 2011 when I was in business school at the HBS. At that time, I was really focused on technology commercialization. And even though I was a business school student, I took some courses at the engineering school, and I was kind of going back and forth between business school and engineering school. And it was always kind of looking for cutting edge, next big thing in the technology. And somehow I kind of ran into this concept of Bitcoin and thought it was really fascinating, particularly because I originally came from financial services industry before business school. And I really firsthand experienced this whole financial boom and buzz. And from the experience, I knew that today's financial system is kind of broken. Right? It's not sustainable. So we need a new kind of financial system. But at that time, I didn't know what it will be. Maybe Bitcoin had a potential, but back then it was so early days that there was no industry around it. So at that time, when I was in business school, most of the students were no longer interested in finance, right after the financial crisis. But instead, there was a whole rise of social impact, sustainability movements. And I was also became really drawn into that space. So after business school, I came over to Silicon Valley and joined a sustainability technology startup. And also, I started my own consulting business that helps companies build sustainability tech businesses. And one of the projects that I did was really interesting. we built a microgrid on the remote island in Indonesia. So as you might know, microgrid is a basically decentralized system of power generation and distribution. And in the traditional power sector, it's all centralized, right? But then in a remote area or like island, decentralized system makes much more sense, and it's much more sustainable because you can utilize locally generated renewable energy. So that experience really was really big to me, made me think about the power of a decentralized system. And also through this experience, I got a chance to interact with many, basically like remote villagers without the access to financial services. So that was also a big experience. And then fast forward to 2016, I was kind of looking for the next thing in my career. And then naturally, this all my interest like in finance, technology, decentralized systems, and also sustainability kind of came together naturally. And that was blockchain. And I was kind of looking for opportunities, and Ripple at that time was just kind of getting into Asian markets and looking for somebody who speaks Japanese and knows about the market. So I thought, oh my gosh, this must be the dream job. And so I kind of jumped to it. But at that time, I just had a baby, and she was 3 months old. And then I started a new job at Ripple. And that was kind of a risky decision. But now looking back, I felt like I made a good decision because by getting into the industry in 2016, actually, bringing too, we were able to see the whole kind of evolution of the industry. That was an amazing time, particularly 2017. So I feel very lucky that I was able to get into this industry at that time.
Yeah, we share this one. I remember when you joined Ripple, it was, everyone was really impressed. Like you were impressive from day one. Yeah, you really were. So before I joined Ripple, so I got into this space a bit over 3 years ago. Is this on or not? No, we're not sure. It's like a one mic at a time.
Pass the microphone.
Okay,
Alright.
sharing.
It's sharing.
It's roughly centralized.
I was coming from eBay and PayPal, and I was curious about Bitcoin. I thought it was really intellectually very interesting. But at the time that I joined Ripple, it was 2016, I was really thinking about that company as more of a payments company, as more of an enterprise software company. I didn't really think about it as crypto being at its core because it was a little early, right? It was early, and that part didn't really take off until 2017, where we had this really, really an extraordinary time in the industry. So, I would like to say that I saw this coming and I made this very calculated choice. It was pure luck. It was absolutely pure luck that I ended up at Ripple when I did, and really could have a front seat at just how interesting this technology can be and the problems that it can solve. Cross-border payments, absolutely. Solving for liquidity, absolutely. And I think the reality really is, had I known what I was stepping into, I wonder if I would have been too scared to do it. And I wonder, crypto has this, the downside of it, I think, is that it has, I think the optics around it is that it's very complicated. And of course it is very complicated, but so complicated that it is going to be inaccessible. And so is that really where I want to build my career? So I am fortunate, I feel very fortunate that I didn't really know what I was stepping into, and once I was in, I could learn it and I could do it. And I would like to think that I would have had that chutzpah before then, but I don't know if I would have. So a big part of it is luck.
So I like being on the intersection of complex technology, complex business decisions, and complex legal decisions. And one definition of blockchain is that basically everything you don't understand about technology, finance, or laws. And so I got really excited about it. I generally get excited about technologies. It has been kind of one consistent theme of my career has been technology, and very complicated ones and new ones. And I like being on the cutting edge, and I like playing and experimenting and taking things apart. It sort of gives me joy. I was not born in the United States or in the Bay Area. But I immigrated when I was 13. So I'm broken enough to think that normal adults work at startups for the rest of their lives. Because I've been here since I was 13, and everyone I know basically worked at startups that had various experiences, good and bad. And so I married somebody who has a very different version of the word in his mind, and so it's really interesting to compare notes. So the way I stepped into blockchain was at first through investing. I really do think that a really exciting way to experiment with anything is to put skin in the game and buy assets of various sorts. So I've done that and got some judgment from my spouse.
Go well.
He wants to be happily married, so it always goes well. And then I'm an attorney by training, and so I'm a risk-preferring lawyer. There are allegedly very few of us, and so I track people on the cutting edge of technology, business, and law. And so I was advising on business legal side various projects after I invested. And then I got an opportunity to join a project. And then I also, I write a column on the Above the Law, and I write columns for the Association of Corporate Counsel. So I basically explored through investing, through advising, and through writing. And in the process have met quite a lot of interesting people. I've learned a lot about technology, kind of figured out how it's built, learned so much that I just couldn't stop. And so when I went to my husband and I sold the company where I was general counsel, and he thought I would be general counsel of a bigger company, because he has this dream that one day I'll get a real job. And I came to him and I said, I found this company, they're in this crypto blockchain business, and I'm gonna join them full time and not as a lawyer, as a VP of strategy. And he stepped back and he said, please do not tell me you're going to be paid in imaginary money. And I had to explain to him why I wanted to make this choice. And my explanation to him was the following. Imagine there's the most exciting candy store in the middle of town. And everybody's running toward it, and I'm there, and I have two choices. I can stand outside, press my hands and mouth, and tell everybody else how to optimize the enjoyment. That's what lawyers do. Or I can get in and gorge on candy myself. And that's why I didn't want to be a lawyer for the company. I just wanted to get in and build and figure out how to solve business problems. So that's the reason why I switched.
Love that. Great. So, Brinley, I really love your explanation for people who may not be very familiar with blockchain technology. We hear different perspectives from people on what problems it solves. And would you share with us, from your perspective, how you would explain that?
Sure, and actually, Betsabe has a really good
She's
explanation.
next. She's next.
My thought is, mine is very narrow,
Okay.
and actually your description is much more broad, and then I can come back with a very
Perfect.
narrow explanation. What do you think about that?
You're on.
We've done it before. I
Okay.
feel like
I have a slide.
I mean, in fact, we all have been before.
Okay. So, can you, just to know the level of understanding, how many people feel very comfortable with how blockchain works? Can you raise your hand? Okay, 3 people. We're going to start from the beginning. Okay, so just imagine, a set of blocks, hence blockchain. It's a set of blocks that are connected with each other. There is an original block that is called the Genesis block. And that block had specific items. It has, for the lawyers on the floor, it has a timestamp, and it has a specific, like your digital fingerprint. It's like your fingerprint of that specific block, and it's called the hash. So the Genesis connects, and then connects to another block. So it's a timestamp, the hash of that block, the digital print of that block, plus the digital print of the next block. So keep moving, keep chaining the blocks together. So let's imagine you have 10 or 100. You have 100 blocks. The digital print of that block plus 99 digital prints that are connected. And what happens is, in order to modify that 100 block, you will need to delete every single previous block. You're not going to be able to move it. That's basic. So now the next step, all those blocks are in different computers, are in a network. That's when the different people comes to. Then you don't have now 100. Let's say multiply by another 100. You will have almost a million. And in order to delete one record in any block, you will need to delete all the previous blocks. So that encryption mechanism of the digital print, which is the hash, makes it very secure. This is kind of the basics. And really started in 1993, if I remember correctly, with the concept of timestamp for documents. It was actually lawyers that started figuring out how can we use a system that allows me to put that timestamp. But then over the time, we start building the more blocks. So let's speed forward to when Ethereum came out. I'm sure everyone heard of Ethereum, and they created the smart contracts. So now that you don't only have the digital print for each block, but now you have a contract that tells you that you can put specific conditions that executes automatically when those conditions are met. And the data of that contract are embedded into each block and cryptographic protected by that hash. So that's kind of the basic, very simple. What it makes it very complex for people to use a native application? And we can do a quick show of hands. How many of you have a wallet on a blockchain? Okay, 4 people. How many of the people that have a wallet have used a native blockchain application? Which one?
Bitcoin.
That's not native.
Native?
Yeah, that's,
The Bitcoin client. The original Bitcoin client.
okay, so you did it. Okay.
That's native.
But I'm thinking more about application when you are transacting data or when you are using to transfer not only for transacting the cryptocurrency, but really using the blockchain as a layer that protects your resources. I really find people that use it, even myself, is so difficult. Because the encryption, you need to have a combination of a private key and a public key in order to access it. And as of right now, in the majority of the public chains for facing consumers that are focused on consumer, whether are in gaming or in data, one of my customers is Everpedia, which is a wiki on the blockchain. You needed to be able to access the wiki on the blockchain, Everpedia, you needed to go to GitHub, download the wallet, and go through for like 4 months of trying to understand what it was saying. Super difficult. It took me literally 6 months to download my wallet and have my strategy of how I'm gonna protect my private and my public key. So can you imagine if we are expecting the normal consumer to actually use that? I mean, wallets, like custodians, have already, or like Coinbase, an example, they have already identified how to be the custodians of that keys, and that make it simple. They manage the key. But blockchain was done to build trust and to give the power data to the consumers. And that's what it makes it very complex. And as we continue developing more and more blockchain, to your point, really, we're trying to make it more simple and take that complexity away. The encryption mechanism in the back, but really give it the tools that you don't have to see anything of that you don't have to manage a private key, or you don't have to manage a public key. Okay.
So do we think this works? Oh my gosh, it works.
Yeah.
So now to go very narrow on that. So Betsabe talked about the blocks linking up, and that is your pristine record of transactions. So why is that important? And I think here this is something that's really simple and yet really transformative. When I think about what this system does, it's about solving for double spend. And that doesn't seem all that extraordinary, like double spend, why would that be important? But in fact, that is something that is very difficult to solve. So I go through an example. So say we have a transaction of $5, I'm giving you $5. If I'm giving you a $5 bill, you know that you have it, you know that I don't, you know I'm not going to double spend it. Because it's hard to counterfeit and all of these things. We feel really good about solving the double spend in a real world transaction with money that is hard to counterfeit. If I'm sending you that $5 through Venmo or PayPal or Zelle or any one of those, or by check, although that's more complicated. So when I send that to you, different from whether I send you an email saying I give you $5. Thank you for being my example, by the way. When I do it through PayPal and Venmo, you trust that you have it and I can no longer double spend it because we trust this person in the middle, this entity in the middle. We trust PayPal or Venmo. They're the same, as it turns out. We trust them to keep the ledger so I can't double spend. What if we could have that same certainty without anyone in the middle? And that's where this technology gets so transformative and interesting and exciting, because think about all the places in the world where there is no PayPal in the middle. There's no bank you can trust in the middle. You may not even be able to trust your fiat currency because of what's happening with your government. So this idea that you can transact and have certainty about your transactions without anyone in the middle, that I think is super exciting.
Yes.
So double spend, I mean, if it doesn't seem exciting now, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, super exciting.
And to that point, an example, when I was mentioning Everpedia, I get super excited because builds on trust and taking away the middleman. But for example, in Asia, when there is a lot of censor on free speech in some areas, Everpedia is there. And people can actually start writing articles and have freedom of speech. So that's another way that blockchain is being used to really be able to interchange data without having an intermediary to tell you you cannot write about this, you cannot do this. And that's another use case of the blockchain. This is very interesting.
Europedia?
Everpedia. Everpedia. It's like ever. Is the encyclopedia for everyone. It's actually very nice. I highly recommend everyone to take a look at it.
So I'm going to continue on a trend. You know, we started with a very comprehensive explanation about it, and then a slightly less. I'm going to give like a non-explanation explanation. So look, I mean, let's talk about electricity. How many people know exactly how it works? Like how electrons are made, how they somehow magically like get here and poof, light up this room. And look, there's a light on. For the illustration purposes. Basically, like usually like one person in the room, right? Because there's like very complicated physics behind it. How many of you care like how it works? It's basically magic for what you care. All you care about is applications, right? All you care about that my hair is dry and we had warm food and that the light is on. Like you care about application. And it's same thing with like airplanes. It's basically a silver bullet that takes you from A to B. Like you sit in an airplane and you have no idea how aerodynamics work. And it never stops you from getting into airplane, right? So all you care about is the application. I think that when it comes to blockchain, you can get really lost in blocks and chains and cryptology, and you really can go deep down in that. But I do find that example of through applications, like a double spend or controlling for a middleman or that type of stuff, that's when you really get to know the technology. So I'll talk about applications that I like. There's obviously a lot of applications around finance because Bitcoin is sort of a first application, and then frankly everyone here except myself is from finance industry one way or another, and that kind of shows the what this technology is all fundamentally about. But it's much more than that. So I'll give you one example. There's a really cool startup in New York. They basically create art using blockchain technology, which allows collaboration of various folks from 153 countries to co-create art online. So when those folks get together and they basically draw together, I will draw a head and somebody will draw hair and somebody else will put a dress, right? So it becomes a highly collaborative work of art. And at the end of this, what they call visual conversations, you can tell that Olga contributed 5%, Brinley contributed 3%, and Betsabe did 50% of the work. Because right? And why is this important? Why would you want to know this stuff? Well, if you want to license this work and somehow want to divvy up, the fair share, Betsabe arguably should get a big chunk of it, for example. But it's much more exciting than that, right? So this technology allows you, without a middleman, to keep track of collaboration from folks, many folks from 153 countries in the world. There is no other technology that allows you to do this and keep track of that. So just kind of fundamentally speaking, technology speaking, very interesting. But it's much more than that. It changes the way we can collaborate, right? We think that Slack is a collaborative place, right? It revolutionized the ways we communicate. think of this, how it allows folks that will never meet, may not have had even a computer, to co-create together. That's practically Renaissance, right? And when you look at those visual art, I love art, so I like this example a lot. You see works of art that have not existed before. They're co-created by different people from different walks of life. And then on top of this visual conversation, then the musicians showed up. And guess what? On top of this conversation that is visual, they added music. And then guess what? Animators showed up. And they made this whole thing actually very dynamic. See where I'm going? So it allows collaboration that is highly unprecedented. And so I'll let other people give examples. But through those examples, through those applications, you can really geek out on cryptology and math of it. But I think it gets really exciting when we talk about applications.
And there are many use cases. Yeah. We can talk about use cases another time.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, so now that we've heard a little bit about why and how you all broke in and started eating the candy, can you tell us a little bit about challenges that you face entering the industry, particularly as a woman? We'll start with you.
I feel like we should start with Emmy.
Okay,
Yeah.
So I think now the diversity is really a big kind of initiative at Ripple. We really care about diversity. Actually, in fact, I think 30 to 40% of our employees are women. But I see a kind of a big concentration of women in very certain functions like marketing and HR. We have very few women in the engineering. In fact, Vidya from Ripple, who is in the audience, she's one of the few technical people that were women. And also on the business side as well. So I think we are doing a lot of a concerted effort to reach out to women because in most cases it's more about awareness, and then women feel like, oh, blockchain seems like a very difficult thing, and then they just kind of afraid to jump into it. So for example, in order to reach out to more female engineers, for example, we send a lot of women and the recruiting team to Grace Hopper conference. That's the largest tech conference for female tech professionals, and so that we can kind of talk about what we are doing and how you see a lot of opportunities once you get into this industry at this time. And also, we established a University Blockchain Research Initiative last year, and currently working with 36 universities around the world. And I'm also part of the initiative as well. And that's a great opportunity to connect with future talent in blockchain. In the graduate school, you still see a lot of women, right? But then once you're in the after school, there's so many men, but not many women. So we're kind of trying to bridge that gap so that we can kind of present opportunities and help women kind of transition into the industry.
So I did not have any difficulty. I guess I have noticed when I arrived that I was surrounded by a bunch of 12-year-old boys. So not even men, but a lot of boys. And it's blockchain is a very global phenomenon. And it was really kind of remarkable. No matter where I went in the globe, everybody was 12-year-old boy. And I'm exaggerating, but that's what it felt like. And I was not only the only woman, but also like married. And yes, I have a 10-year-old child and an 8-year-old. So I was different in many ways, more than just Olga, the woman, showed up. It was Olga, the married woman who is also a lawyer, presumably risk averse, who has a family, and look at her, she's like, doing all these crazy things. I tend to really focus on technology, and I get driven by that. And so I did notice that I was one of the few. And it is a little bit of a bummer because I do think that technology, just generally speaking, no matter what your field is, gives you a seat at the table. And so lack of diversity, whether it's diversity of thought, diversity ethnically, gender, is a challenge because it really just makes that gap so much bigger. And then I also think that technology not just gives you a seat at the table, it keeps you at the game. So if you are a lawyer, finance person, whatever professional you are, if you're not keeping up with data, AI, blockchain, you're not just not at the table, you're increasingly not in the game. And not only will you not have a voice, your financial future will have implications. And so I feel very strongly when I get into a room and everybody's kind of the same. Sometimes it's obvious in terms of what people look like, right? Everybody's a 12-year-old boy, but sometimes what I like to do is shoe test. When you get in the room, and you may have seemingly diverse group. If they all wear basically the same shoe, it's likely that they're pretty much the same person. And the reason I say that is because different people, different culture, different demographics, different professionals wear different shoes. Just go in the room. When you see all lawyers, they usually have the same shoes. If whether it's athletes, they'll have the same shoes. Whether it's investor bankers, they'll have the same shoes. Whether it's whatever, right? And I don't even look at faces. I just look at shoes. I do. I just look at shoes. And so I think that's a really great way to check in when you walk in. To look at shoes, to know that you're in a homogeneous group, and then figure out how you change the shoes, how you increase the foot traffic in wherever you are. And I think it's important to do to sort of decrease the gap of voice at the table and actually impact on your wallet.
Do you want to speak to any challenges for women in the industry?
From us in the panel, for me has been slightly different because I'm a founder. So I don't only have to learn the technology and build a business, I have to go fundraising and chasing white male and begging them to give me money and believe in me and be nice and everything. By far, this has been the most intellectual and amazing experience I have had in my entire career. And that has made the challenge to be easier to overcome. But by far has been the most challenging endeavor I have ever taken. And when talking to investors in 2017, particularly for the blockchain industry, when everyone wanted to become rich immediately by an ICO, I was going to conferences all around the world, and you see a lot of young people, you see a lot of beautiful, gorgeous women that just decided to change their career yesterday, and today we're like blockchain experts. And it actually was very difficult to navigate that, because by the fact that you were female, you were not considered like, and they didn't see that many founders. I mean, I was one of the few founders, literally. And it was very difficult to get their attention and to really pitch the business. And let me just share with you an anecdote that happened to me in one of the blockchain weeks. I was about to close a round of funding. We did a sizable seed series, and we were trying to do an ICO. So I was on my roadshow. By the way, we decided not to do the ICO. Really advising. Thank you. It was a very good call. But I remember very clearly, I was talking to this investor. I was like being very professional, talking to him, and he was listening to me. And then at the end of the conversation, I asked him, "Oh, can we follow up? Can we connect with you with your company or something?" He's like, "Your eyes are so beautiful." And I'm like, "Okay, but your body is more beautiful." I turned around and left. What did you say to that? I'm like, yeah, this is not a person I want to invest in my company. And like that, there were a lot of stories. And really was to try to navigate that. Because the perception is no female entrepreneur was in blockchain. And the ones that they were there were more the marketing section. So they were bringing different skill sets. That was the most challenging part for me, I guess.
I have one thing to add before we leave this as a topic, and that is, from a legal perspective, what I've seen in the last 3+ years, I think has been really encouraging. Do we still have challenges with engineering and getting more gender diversity? Absolutely. One thing that I've seen from when I started in 2016 and I would go to events and there were no other women lawyers, to now I can fill a room of women lawyers just in the Bay Area getting very focused on details around cryptocurrency and blockchain, there are just many, many more of us. And I think that's because it is a new industry. I think that it's exciting. I think that anyone can be an expert if you put in the work, which is there is maybe lower barriers to entry on the legal side. And then I also think that our own regulators, there are more women in those very senior roles. So in the legal field, I've been very pleasantly surprised at how we have changed, how we've changed over the last 3 years. That said, we can do more.
Yeah.
Always.
Can I?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, just to kind of share a little bit of international perspective, I think US is definitely way ahead of the pack compared to other countries. The last few years of the progress is amazing. But I go back and forth between US and Japan, Korea, definitely it's still very, very male dominant industry. And here, like this kind of event, like women in blockchain, having this kind of event is already very amazing. In Japan, I've never seen this kind of event. So actually, early next year, I'm trying to organize something like this in Japan. And then people, we've never heard of this kind of event. So I think US can be kind of role model here. And because blockchain is such a early days of the industry, now is the time for women to jump in. For the internet and like other finance, fintech, we were kind of too late. Right? It's already male dominant. But blockchain, it's still early days, so there's still a chance. So that's why I want all the people, women, to kind of jump in at this moment. Yeah.
I love going to Japan for conferences.
Yeah, can you invite us all?
And I was invited to speak on a blockchain conference, and we have a session only of female, and actually I was surprised. There were like 50, 60 women in blockchain from Japan. And I was telling my story because I was the only female founder they have seen in blockchain. And I can tell you, I was so surprised and even scared that 50% of the group were crying. I was like, why are you crying? Because we haven't seen females in founders. I was like, oh my God, that's really scary. To your point.
Wow.
Yeah, there are women in blockchain, but they haven't seen the founders going there and the senior people leading the companies.
This next phase is really, really important. The next phase when we start really solving real problems, this is the time, I think, to get involved.
So that brings me to my next question, which is what advice would you offer to women who want to get into the industry, who are interested in getting involved?
Because I'm just holding the microphone, and why not talk first? I mean, this is really an industry where you can become educated on your own. There are a lot of resources out there, and you can start engaging, talking about, developing your own expertise. You can start doing that on your own. And what's stopping you from doing that? I mean, there are a lot of resources out there. So that's one idea.
I think, so one thing I really enjoy doing recently is that, there are a lot of blockchain events out there, but then also workshops, but then still a lot of male dominant could get really technical, and then women might feel insecure about asking some questions because they might think those are the dumb questions. So this company called DLT Education, they started to run this women-focused blockchain workshops during the conferences week in New York. And for the last 2 years, I participated as an instructor. So there were like dozens of women spending two days or so together and then learning about blockchain. And they feel secure and safe to ask any question, because it's a really safe environment for women. So, and then also it's a good network opportunity as well. So if you are interested in that kind of opportunity, there are these kind of events. So feel free to take advantage of that. But also to Rinny's point, the resources are abundant nowadays. Like compared to 3 years ago, now like if you look up on like an online video, just all sorts of videos out there. And so I recommend that you maybe start with a video and then understand the concept. And then maybe next the step, if you want to get a little bit more technical, I suggest that you look at this Andreessen Horowitz Crypto Canon website. That has a great compilation of articles about, it's kind of a little bit get technical, but then if you really want to understand that fundamentals, that's a great research. So one more thing that I recommend is I think one of the most effective way to learn about different use cases is go out to a conference with a lot of exhibitors, like dozens of exhibitors, and then just ask questions. They are like free teachers to you, right? And they are just eager to tell you your the story. So 3 years ago, so when I went to Consensus, I literally talked to every single exhibitor, and that really helped me understand the whole landscape of the industry. And that's really the cheapest way of learning about the industry.
And maybe just something on the dumb questions. I mean, even though there is complexity in the technology, there should be a logic to it. It should solve a problem. You should be able to understand how it works. I mean, just abstracting away from all of that complexity, there's lots of questions to ask. What problem does this solve? How does it operate? How do people access it? I mean, I think there are all sorts of questions that people may not want to answer. It does not mean it's a bad question, a dumb question, or perfectly fine question.
So I say just get into candy store, and your definition of how you do that will be different. Look, I mean, a simple smart contract is not that hard to write. I'm not an engineer, and I wrote one. I usually, when I speak to a bunch of lawyers, I usually say, if you're a member of the California bar and you graduated from law school, you can write 5 lines of code. It's not a big deal. You really can figure this out. It's about an hour workshop. It's not that complicated. You do it once, you understand how smart contracts works, and you kind of understand kind of the thing behind it. I definitely think that even though I think applications are kind of really helps you get excited, but kind of really understanding technology by actually doing it. You don't have to continue coding unless it's your thing. It's not my thing. But writing at least one smart contract, like everybody can do it. I do think investing is another one. Nothing like, even if you put $100, it's like having a skin in the game. When you put a skin in the game, you're gonna educate yourself about what happens to that $100. My husband, who made fun of me, I made him to invest in Ethereum, and he became, as he was losing money in Ethereum, he now pretty much can explain you how it works, why he's losing money, what he's gonna do about it, at what point he's gonna sell. Now he tells me that we will never sell because there will be nothing to sell, So the depths and breadth of our conversation has improved our marriage. No, I'm just joking. But it's really just putting some skin in the game is definitely the way to do it. And then the other thing I would recommend, there are some books that are great books, but I also like reading the original classic white papers. So the Ethereum paper, the Bitcoin papers, those are sort of, they're not that profound. You can read, many of them have been written relatively quickly. Many of them, may have flaws, but it's interesting to go back to the original text. They're a little bit like going back to the Bible, right? You read it and you're like, is this true? I don't know. Is this how it works? Maybe not. Maybe that's why we have a yellow paper, right? It's a little bit like going back to the Bible, where is this a myth, or is it a truth, or is it whatever? But it gives you kind of a framework. So those 3 things I highly recommend doing, because you really are then in a candy store.
I would say definitely conferences. It's not about the exposition of the panel sometimes, it's the people that you meet. Just networking and just introducing yourself and ask questions as many as you can and really making a connection. That has helped me a lot. But I will say that even more, as Olga said, just jump into it. All of you have amazing skill set in specific industries, and all those industries eventually will touch a portion of the DLT technology or blockchain. Just come and advise a company, talk to someone. Believe me, startups, we are eager to get anyone to help us that have an expertise, and it doesn't need to be a blockchain. Perhaps, I don't know, I will assume going to a Ripple or another more Coinbase or more established finance company may be slightly more difficult, and they have a very specific skill set that they're looking for. And you have to be more strategic. But there are amazing startups out there. Like recently, I saw a startup that is trying to put all trade finance for small businesses on the blockchain, and I fell in love with the startup. Another one in electricity. One of the things that we're doing also is doing marketing consent on the blockchain and getting marketing consent on blockchain and getting rid of cookies and getting rid of full advertising. So all those things, there are people that are experts on the specific industries, and we are still experimenting because we are trying to find that product market risk and solving the real problems. So if any of you have a problem to solve, just come and talk to a startup. Come and talk to me. We'll figure it out. And believe me, there's so much to do when you roll out your sleeves and get to talk to the people in the startup, and we're constantly trying to figure out how to solve all the problems through blockchain.
Yeah. I want to make sure that the audience also has time to ask questions. So I'm going to open up the floor for anybody who wants to ask questions. Anybody?
All right, so
Yes.
I'm gonna go ahead and ask a dumb question. So when you take out the middleman, like the PayPal and this and that from a financial transaction, that infers that maybe you're not having to pay the fees, right? But yet you put a lot of money into creating that technology. So where's the model? Because I mean, is the world really going to be so kumbaya that transactions are going to happen that don't have some cost to them?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. It's a great question. I think what you're touching on is, okay, if you have this distributed system and there's no people in the middle to facilitate those transactions, how do you incentivize people to get involved and to run a node and to be a validator or to mine and all of these things? You have to incentivize them. And so you incentivize them through block rewards and other ways that you get involved to keep the ledger moving forward. So, if you go to the early days of Bitcoin, you participate because, if you're a miner, you participate because you can mine and you can earn Bitcoin. Ethereum is the same. Now you see a number of projects that are thinking about how you can have this forward movement of the ledger with proof of stake in other ways. But what you're touching on is projects solve this differently, but you have to incentivize lots of different people to be involved to keep this thing moving.
Right.
And there's no one model. Like, people are trying to figure this out, and you bring in economists and you really think about it. Super interesting.
And that's what we call the token economics portion, like incentivization through tokens. But I think that we are evolving in the industry, that we are coming back to the typical SaaS business. I mean, they are open source, and in particular case in my company, we build value-added services that build on the blockchain. But there is like this typical SaaS model for consumers, a cent per usage. That's how startups, like non-exchanges or custodians of security, are making money. And the tokens, since to that, like last year, the value has been more stable and going slightly down, and we went through crypto winter. So we have to be creative as a startups and find other business revenues models, and we're coming back to the fundamentals that people are willing to pay for services that make the life easier and they build trust.
Yes,
I was just going to ask a follow-on question. Is your business related to a public permissionless blockchain, or are you working on private blockchain? Both.
Yeah. So we have a protocol that only focuses on access controls and identities.
Mm-hmm.
And what enables is via APIs, we can easily connect to public and private, and we do it seamless, like really a plugin is really connecting the block through the APIs. And that gives a unique identity that goes across all blockchains, instead of having one identity in Bitcoin, one identity in Ethereum, one identity in EOS.
Yeah.
It's very technical, but that's the concept: access controls and identity.
Grace,
I have a question. So one of the things I've heard about blockchain is that it requires a lot of computing power because in order to confirm all the nodes and all of this, right? So is that the only reason that is preventing blockchain to be more popular in terms of the applications? Because I found that, for example, internet, a couple of years, it has really changed the way how people basically look at information. But what is stopping blockchain to be even more adoptable at this stage?
I
can talk a little bit about it because we are building, SaaS model with an eye toward disruptive technologies. So we know those things are coming. If you read Gartner or Forrester, they'll tell you that actually Gartner has a term they call blockchain embryonic. Not just early, but embryonic. I was talking to one of the analysts once, and I was like, "That's a very graphic term. Can you change it?" They're like, "Well, that's a term. We're going to deal with it." So they think it's super early, and what that practically means is that incorporating it actually in actual product is really hard because there's sort of, let's just say, flaws in the design and usability problem. Even those very technical and persistent and curious of us have a hard time with wallet and getting to applications. So what that means is that, so the example I usually give is that when I got to college, email was very, kind of started proliferating. That tells you how old I was. And I was staring for 5 minutes at a computer for a picture of a cat to download. That tells you about my interest. And I was very patient about it because I was eager to see that picture. Now when I take BART from Dublin where I live to San Francisco, and when we're under bridge and I'm streaming videos, and if it flickers a little, I get annoyed. So now we're dealing with population that has like myself has very high expectations. I expect to have great internet underwater. Right, and so when you go to blockchain, all of that is out of the window. It's really hard to use. It's not user friendly. There are bugs, whatever, all this stuff. So it makes it really hard to it's not there yet. I can make contracts if theoretically so much more actionable and exciting with this technology. But the challenge is it's not user friendly for me to give to any normal person, even any technical person, let alone non-technical person.
So that's exactly what so many projects are trying to solve for right now.
Yeah, that's a good problem to solve for that very reason.
Yeah, I just want to quickly touch on your kind of a point of the public blockchain being very computation power intensive. So there are many different types of blockchain. There are 2 sons or something. Bitcoin, of course, use the proof of work that's meant to be very computation intensive. But then there are other types of a blockchain, like XRP ledger that Ripple uses. It's a completely different consensus algorithm, so it doesn't require much of a computation power. And then it's which public blockchain you use really depends on your use case. In case of Ripple, we really focus on cross-border payments, so we really care about speed and also scalability, how many transactions you can process per second, and also cost as well. And based on that requirement, we decided to really focus on the XRP ledger. So there are blockchains that are, more this computation problem.
Since you were talking about cross-border payments, I use TransferWise a lot. I have a bank in Japan and one in France, and I live here. And I find that it's amazing and it works really, really well. It's not as sophisticated, of course. So can you explain, what's going to be? I mean, I'm kind of getting a sense that this technology is not really for consumers.
Yeah,
for
our
consumers,
technology is more kind of a
pretty much solve the problem. So could you talk a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So we often get asked whether we consider TransferWise to be a competitor. They are licensed payment providers. Ripple is a technology provider who really try to renovate the priming phase. So TransferWise could also use our infrastructure to make their process even better. What they really did well is really improving the user experience by kind of using the workarounds, because the existing system is the user experience is so bad. So they kind of somehow created their own network still using the existing the infrastructure, right? But we have an opportunity to even make their process even better by providing the more renewed.
Yeah, I think there's something else too with your examples, and it's something that we experience here too. I mean, we have a deep infrastructure that supports banking and financial services. The same is true in France and Japan, and so we don't feel that kind of pain. In fact, TransferWise in any way to any product like that is transferring value cross-border, it is fairly complex. I mean, that's on a system of correspondent banking There's a lot of complexity. You may not feel it going to those jurisdictions. If you are trying to send money to remote Kenya or parts of South America, it is a very different experience because moving liquidity to those areas far more difficult and far more expensive, and you could be ending up paying for very small payments a very high fee. So it really is a difference in where you're sitting, where you're sending to, what that experience is. This is a technology that, maybe you don't want to use it to send money to France, but it could be really valuable to send it to remote areas in South America.
Okay. I have another question. I recently was doing some research on using Bitcoin to do payments for gaming, for betting, for esports betting. And so I got a wallet, I bought Bitcoin, I used Coinbase. I was really surprised by the cost of doing those transactions. It was just like, whoa. Which is sort of one of the indicators I get that it's not quite ready for consumers. I don't think consumers would be too happy unless they're doing something available that has extra profits, abnormal profits, to be paying those kinds of fees. So why is that? Is it just is not enough volume, or is just not meant to be used by consumers, or?
Yeah, that's more of a kind of friction to kind of convert fiat currencies into crypto. Once you're in crypto world, it's really cheap and fast.
Mm-hmm.
But this on-ramp from a fiat to crypto, it's still because it has to still rely on the existing infrastructure like ACH and other stuff. So yeah, that's definitely the area that the industry has to work on.
And it could be expensive, but if you're doing a remittance transfer and you're paying a fee that is 20% of what you're paying, you might feel differently about that fee. So, fees are all relative. Again, going through well-used corridors where there is deep liquidity for sending value through traditional methods, you're not going to feel that kind of pain, but that's not true for a lot of the world.
For example, in Colombia, if you make a transfer, it takes 5 days to 8 days to actually receive the money, with a 20 to 30% transmission fees. And for an enterprise, if you want to do a large transfer and pay a vendor in US dollars, it's going to take you to 2 weeks and a half. So that's why it's so relevant. The amazing use cases with regards to using blockchain for finance focus purposes are primarily in emerging markets because of that. But to your point of the fees and the transactions, yes, that's a friction, but there are a lot of technologies to do on-ramping that is faster and it's cheaper. And I think 2019 was the year of building that technology. Crypto winter really cleaned up from the bad projects, and I think that we're going to see a massive growth in adoption in 2020. Just an example, what we are doing at our company, we are going to be the first company onboarding 1 million non-technical people onto the blockchain. And it's not expensive, the on-ramp is going to be very cheap. But it took us 3 years to build and to do a lot of tests. Like that were many companies. So 2020, we're going to see really the frog leap into the adoption at better prices.
So maybe, because I really just pointed out a few assumptions in your question, I'll point one more. What assets are. We pretty much talk about money here, but assets are much more than that. Olga's reputation is an asset, for example. At this point, very hard to move, or Olga's privacy, or real estate. All of those things are assets. So if we, even in the United States, moving those assets is pretty much impossible because we do not have a way to do it. That's what cryptocurrencies allow you to do. They allow you to essentially optimize and move various assets, tangible and intangible. So what will happen as this technology develops, our definition of what assets are and what we can do with them and how small they can be before they give us value will change. So in the way you frame the question, there's a lot of embedded assumptions, not just about geography, but fundamentally what is value and how we exchange it. And you see this technology allowing to make things like Olga's reputation valuable, so I can trade it for various things, right? I would be able to pack Olga's reputation from, say, LinkedIn and go to another place. Right now, I can't, right? Everything that and I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I've developed a fairly robust profile. One of the things it does, it helps me get opportunities to work on these panels, for example. It's an asset. It's an absolute asset. If you take my LinkedIn account from me, I would be devastated. I would, because I would actually not know how to find jobs without it, right? But it's an absolute asset, absolute value. But I cannot pack it. I cannot trade it. I cannot do anything with it. I just hope and pray that LinkedIn does the right thing. That's a lot of hope and praying. Right? Same thing with privacy. When you sign up and you give away your privacy rights for whatever free thing you get on the internet, and you probably don't even know you do that because you click through, you just exchange value. And it's a very crude way to exchange this value. You could have had a much more rich choice in how you do that and how you take care of that intangible asset. So what we think assets are, how we move them, what we do with them, how we control them, how we take them away will change. And money cannot allow us to do this. You need something more like a little bit much more fluid to transact. So it starts with money, but it's so much more than money. That's why I gave the art example. That's why I give the reputation example. That's why I give privacy example. Like, at some point, I think one of the reasons we lose people in this conversation is because I joke that, we may or may not choose our relationship with children and our spouses, but we choose sort of our relationship with money, and we all have a relationship with money. Mm-hmm. And the thing about cryptocurrency and blockchain, it's kind of all about money. And so it's scary because it's technical and financially and legally, but it kind of brings out all the insecurities we have around money. And we kind of freeze around it. But I do think that it's really freeing, and it opens a way to talk about value and what we think is valuable to us and what assets are.
Thank you for the question. It was a great question.
Yeah, great questions.
So we're going to wind it up now, but if everyone could give a hand to the panel.
Thank you so much for coming, everybody. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
And we've got 30 minutes now to work, so if you want to speak to the panelists, feel free. Thank you. Thanks for coming, and Happy New Year, and see you in 2020.
It was a great panel.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Really awesome.